Good, perfect. Thank you everyone for joining us today. And the biggest thank you goes to Linda for making the time to meet with us today. Linda, thank you for being here and thank you for accepting to be one of the speakers at our live talks.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here and share some of my thoughts on outdoor play today.
Perfect. Linda, I will say a few words about you, but you can add anything that you can think of. You are a Swedish American writer. You are a best-selling author of There is No Such Time as Bad Weather and the Open Air Life. Your work appeared in the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, Time Magazine, Huffington Post, Psychology Today, and other major outlets. And you are an often invited speaker on podcasts, summits, and you speak about nature, connection, parenting, and the Nordic philosophy of, and I will try to say it right, Friluftsliv.
Yeah, very good.
You also had a Substack newsletter, The Open Air Life.
Yes.
And in the past, mainly you have a long-running blog, Rain or Shine Mama. You have two children and you live in Sweden. What did I forget?
I think that summed it up pretty well, actually.
Perfect. Perfect. Okay. Thank you everyone for coming.
It's really an international crowd.
It is.
This
I
is
love
great.
that.
Yeah,
I always love
really
that.
diverse group.
Yeah, true. Okay, so let me first ask you the for me the most important thing, what is the Friluftsliv that you talk about so often?
Yeah. So, Friluftsliv is a philosophy and lifestyle, and it originates in Scandinavia. It was coined by Henrik Ibsen in the 1850s in Norway. And there are a lot of different definitions of it, and it really doesn't have an equivalent in other languages. It translates to the open air life. It's about finding joy in nature and everyday life. And a lot of times it's associated with outdoor activities like cross-country skiing, hiking, camping, things like that. But it can be as easy as just going for a walk around the neighborhood too. So it's really about incorporating nature in your daily life. And it's also non-motorized and non-competitive. So it's not a sport. It's really about just being in nature, being present in nature and making that connection. Excuse me. Yeah, so I've spent the past few years just trying to spread the word about Friluftsliv because it is a great thing. It's a different way of being with nature where you actually try and connect and be one with nature and don't see nature as the other, which is the more common way in our society today to look at nature. But with Friluftsliv, we really we're really trying to be one with nature.
Why does it matter for children today?
We've seen over the just in the past generation that childhood has really moved indoors, and this is happening all over the Western world. And I think Friluftsliv can really be an antidote to that. And of course, through Friluftsliv, we can get kids outside, and when they are outside, they are more physically active, which we know is important for kids for a range of reasons, but the most obvious, of course, is the physical health implications. So we know kids who play outside, it helps their strength, balance, coordination, healthy bone development. Also, when they're exposed to daylight, it helps their immune systems, strengthen their immune response because it helps them create vitamin D. And we also know that kids who play outside have lower rates of obesity and nearsightedness, which nearsightedness has become almost an epidemic in some parts of the world. And the researchers used to think it was because the kids were staring at screens, but it wasn't the screens per se. It was the fact that When the kids are not exposed to enough daylight, the eyes actually don't develop normally. But that's just the physical benefits. But there's the great thing about outdoor play is that it really helps the holistic development of the child. It really is, it supports the development of the whole child. So also socially and emotionally, it can reduce stress, and it also, kids when they play outside, especially when they play in unstructured ways, they learn how to negotiate with each other. They get to create freely. It's really a boon to their imaginations. They can also learn empathy and connection by being out there and finding little creatures, and then there's also the cognitive aspect of it, and that is that kids tend to focus better after they've been outdoors. I know a lot of teachers can attest to that, and we've seen in kids with ADHD, for example, that their symptoms actually decrease after they've spent time outside as well. To summarize, outdoor play and nature is really, it's not just a nice extra, it's really essential to a child's healthy growth and development.
Of course. Thank you. What's the single mindset shift that like most quickly helps parents embrace daily outdoor time, rain or shine? And how do you coach families to make that shift stick?
I think when I was a kid in the 80s, the parenting could pretty much be summed up in three words, and that was go play outside. I think a lot of people my age can relate to that. Today, it's a whole different story. I've noticed, I feel like parenting today is more fear-based. There's a lot more anxiety about it. And we have a culture of intensive parenting where it's become the norm is that parents should always be like monitoring their children. And this has affected a really outdoor play and how we look at outdoor play, and it's affected children's opportunities for outdoor play because parents today are less likely to let children play freely outdoors. And so I have this mantra for parents and educators and other caregivers that I share to help motivate people to get outside, and also, yeah, just to get them out there. And it's an acronym that is OUT, and O is for own the weather, U is for use your nearby nature, and T is for take the time. So obviously, own the weather. It's about trying to find things to appreciate about every season and every type of weather so that you don't let the weather keep you from getting out there. Some of that is motivation, and some of that just has to do with habit. And then to use your nearby nature, I really encourage people to see what they have in their local neighborhood nearby. I think it's a mindset shift from thinking that nature has to be like this epic adventure, or that you have to drive to a national park or go on a big trip. It's wonderful. If you can do that too, that's great. But I think those everyday encounters with nature are just as important, if not more important, than those big trips, because they will really be etched in your children's brains, that because it's something that you do on a daily or near daily basis. And then T is for take the time to really prioritize outdoor play. A lot of parents and families have packed schedules today. We live in this culture where busyness has been it's become something that you almost wear as a badge of honor. It's something it's in our culture we live in, and especially in North American culture. I feel that there is almost like that it's this business culture, it's a hustle culture that's almost glorified, and I feel like it's trickled down to childhood, where even young children are very busy with extracurricular activities today, and like enriching activities. And where there's very little time left for just unstructured play, which in itself is so incredibly beneficial. So yeah, that's just a few ways that you can get outside on a more regular basis.
Thank you. Another question is about what to wear, because we hear often like there is no bad weather, only bad clothing. So, what is the essential kit for four-season outdoor play? Like, what do
Yeah.
adults most often get wrong about layering and clothing?
Yeah. So, yeah, so we do talk a lot about layering when it comes to all-weather play, obviously, mostly associated with colder climates. But layering can really be helpful in mild and moderate temperatures too. I'd say the only what type of weather that it's less helpful is probably when it's very hot, because then you want to wear thinner clothes. But so, like I said, the layering system is really the gold standard, and it's made up of three layers. So you got the base layer closest to your body. That's the layer that wicks away moisture if you get sweaty, and it also helps insulate. And then the mid layer, that's mainly for to provide insulation in cold weather. And then there's the outer layer, which protects against the elements. So that's your waterproof, windproof, durable outer layer. And I do sometimes hear parents say that, that all sounds great, but I can't afford $100 merino wool base layer. And I totally understand that. And you don't have to have that. I don't think I had a nice expensive base layers growing up in the 80s. So I always tell people if they are in a tight budget, like really try to focus on the outer layer because that's what protects the child against the elements. So a good basic setup for a colder climate would be so for rainy weather, definitely like your polyurethane, like bib pants and jacket for older kids, or like a coverall for younger kids, and rain boots, hat, and those waterproof mittens to go with it as well. And for snow and really cold weather, I would go with an insulated coveralls, or a two-piece insulated winter gear, and make sure that it is windproof, waterproof, durable. Scandinavian makers of kids gear, at least in the past, have been far ahead in terms of producing really good outdoor clothing because we have a long history of promoting outdoor play in all weather. What I noticed when I moved to the US was that most of the kids' clothes for the outdoors, it was like it was like clothes for specific sports, like ski gear, for example. And it wasn't durable. It wasn't made for kids like climbing trees in the wintertime. But that's what the Scandinavian make brands are more geared toward, like rough and tumble play. But that was a while ago, and I think that's starting to change. I think they're starting to catch up a little bit on that. So definitely, just to sum it up, so three layers. So the base layer closest to the body, mid layer insulates for heat, and the mid layer can be like a typically fleece jacket and fleece pants, and then the outer layer protects against the elements, and you can vary the outer layer depending on the temperature. So insulated if it's really cold, and just a thinner shell garment if it's more like rainy type weather. And if you're on a budget, definitely go for the outer layer first.
Anna Marie is asking in the chat, what about clothes for rain in warmer climates?
I would still go with the, yeah, it depends on what you mean by how warm, but the polyurethane clothes are really, they don't give out much warmth, or they're not very warm, so they would work in a warmer climate, although they are not breathable. So it also depends on what you're doing. If the child is very active and getting warm, but then again, it's probably not that big of an issue that they're getting wet. So if it's very warm, then I wouldn't even worry that much about them getting wet. But if they're moving around a lot, then and if it's warm, then I would go with a thinner shell garment, almost just a windbreaker that is waterproof, something like that.
And Rensky is asking on ideas on good soft base layer materials that can be used as alternatives to wool for kids that are sensitive to itchy materials.
Yeah, you might try silk. Silk is not as warm as wool, but I think silk is pretty good for sensitive skin. There's also tencel, which is made out of wood fiber, or just a synthetic, like a polyester. They can be quite soft as well.
Thank you. What about the worries of many parents that the cold air might cause illness? Is it a myth? And what can we do about like how can we explain why time outside in winter is actually good for children and also
Yeah.
healthy?
Yeah, this is one of the most common misconceptions. Like every time I do a talk, I do talk about this because it's a lot of people remember their own mom telling them you can't go outside because it's too cold or it's rainy and you're going to get sick. But it is a myth because you don't get an infection by being out in the cold. It's if you get infected by a virus or bacteria, and those germs, they really thrive not outdoors, but indoors, especially in tight spaces, subway, the bus, classrooms, daycares. That's where they really spread easily. And this has been shown in a number of studies too, both when researchers have looked at, they've compared like Scandinavian forest schools with more traditional preschools, and they've looked at sick days, and they've found that the kids at the forest schools where they are outside almost all day, they have fewer sick days than the kids at traditional preschools. And also during COVID, there were multiple studies showing that you were much more likely to contract the virus indoors than outdoors. So really, if you want to keep your kid from getting the sniffles in the winter, like definitely keep them outside as much as possible. Yeah, you can even let them nap outdoors and yeah, just let them play outside.
Thank you. My next question is about families who have limited access to wild spaces, to forests. What do you think is some minimal open air routine that we should have maybe in the cities, for example, like
Right.
yeah, in the
Yeah,
places where we are not next to the forest or fields or mountains.
that's the thing. Most of us do live in cities today. We don't live in the wilderness or near pristine wilderness. But the good news is that you don't really have to do that in order to for your child to connect with nature. I think a lot of it has to do with reframing how we see nature and learning to notice nature also in the cities and where we are, realizing that nature isn't just old growth forest. It can also be all the things around us that we can't control, like the rain that's falling on our faces, the wind that's blowing our hair, the leaves that are changing colors, bird song. You can see birds almost everywhere, and there are trees in the cities too. And I think kids are really They're really prone to seeing the magic in the everyday. So I think if we just follow their lead and take joy in their discoveries, I think we can incorporate nature into our everyday lives more easily. I know experts recommend anything from 3 to 6 hours of daily outdoor play. And I think for a lot of families, unless you have your child in at a forest school, that may not be realistic. I don't think people should get hung up on those numbers. I think it's more important to focus on what you can do. So try to find those things that you can do outside. So maybe try and work it into your daily rhythm. For example, could you walk or ride a bike to school, or instead of riding or taking the car? Could you stop by a park on the way home from school? Or can you do things outdoors that you would normally do indoors? So if weather permitting, can you sit outside and read, or take a picnic to the park instead of dinner one night? There are all sorts of things that we can do outdoors if we just allow our imagination to flourish, I think.
Thanks.